So in the last video, we talked a bit about the history of conducting and what the role of a conductor is. But I think one of the best things to do to really experience it is to start to learn how to actually physically represent music with your body, which is what we're doing as conductors. So in this video, we're going to just go over some very basic fundamentals of conducting technique and give you some things to practice. One way to practice conducting, by the way, is not to put on a recording and try to match it or do anything like that, just because it's not a really satisfying experience. But it is very valuable to actually sing while you're conducting. So if you have a melody that you're going to practice conducting on any of the beat patterns that I show you, it's a good idea to just sing that yourself. And what that helps you do is connect your vocal rhythm and your internal rhythm with the rhythm that you're representing with your body. Conducting is inherently a rhythmic exercise. And one of the reasons that I think it's valuable for all of you to at least try it is to see how rhythm feels when you have to contextualize it in your body in a different way than singing, sitting at your keyboard, picking up your violin, or whatever instrument you're going to play. Woodwind players and brass players, this isn't to leave you out at all. But I found that my own music making got much better and much more rhythmically consistent when I started studying conducting seriously. Because again, that internalization of the pulse is a primary thing of what we do. Let's first start out with the role of our hands. Now, there are variations to this, but generally speaking, your right hand has one role and your left hand has a different role. Your right hand is going to show the beat and keep the pulse. That's the fundamental idea of what your right hand does. Now, there's a lot more that we're going to add into that, but just let's start there. This hand, your left hand, sometimes you'll see people mirror their right hand, but really it has a different job, and that's to show dynamics and sometimes indicate phrasing, and then oftentimes cueing in a section of the choir or cueing in an instrument in the orchestra. So they have two different roles, and it's a very good exercise to start doing whatever. I mean, we'll get to beat patterns in a minute, but here's a 4 pattern. And then just practice independently moving this hand in all kinds of directions that don't settle into this rhythm, and then keeping this hand at a consistent pulse. A good tool if you're just starting out to get that sense of consistency of rhythm is a metronome. It's really something that we all do in our conducting classes. Actually, a lot of time in conducting classes, we spend talking about tempo and internalizing tempo because we have to communicate that information to the ensemble, and that's really important. And for you, what that helps you do is learn tempos. We all have pieces of music that we identify tempos with. So again, you can practice whatever this is with the metronome, but then also work on being able to move just, it looks a little bit like Tai Chi almost, just very easily and simply move this hand, because ultimately what you want to be able to do is show a crescendo or show a diminuendo without impacting the rhythm in this hand. One of the things that you need to understand is that a beat pattern itself has varying parts to it. Every bar of music that you conduct has a downbeat. We arrive at a point on each beat in the bar called the ictus, which is the term that means the point of where the beat is. And then at the end of the bar, the upbeat. Almost every situation that we're in, we're going to have those 3 elements. Now, all of those have expressive possibilities, but for now, let's just get set doing, let's take a simple 3 pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1. And I want you to feel, with a beat going, and again, maybe turn your metronome on for this, that you give energy at each one of those ictuses. Downbeat, upbeat. So you can see there are those elements to what a conducting pattern is. Now let's briefly explore the fundamental patterns. There are really very few of them, and when you see something very elaborate, it's often just a subdivision of a fundamental pattern. So I'm going to start with 2. Now the 2 has a very simple direction to it. It's just down, up. So it's a downbeat and an upbeat. Now you can do it down that way and up that way, or down and circle in, which is sometimes what I do if I want to put a point on that sentence. So down, up, And you notice each time I'm hitting that ictus. Try this for a minute. Now let's look at a 3 pattern. As you see, the 3 pattern has 3 points to it. It's basically a triangle shape. So let me show you how this works. So again, we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or you could do 1, 2, 3. You may notice something in my conducting technique that this is a little more advanced, but I actually try to keep the ictus in the center for all of my beats. But you'll see very correctly, conductor is also doing 1, 2, 3. That's exactly the same thing. We're still giving the same 3 pulses per bar using that triangle shape. Now, last but not least, we have a 4 pattern. And for more advanced conducting, then we can discuss 5, 6 other metric combinations. But again, we want to keep this very simple so you can just get the basics of it. So 4 pattern is basically a cross pattern where you're going to cross your body. So you go down, across your body, out, and up. So downbeat, across, up. So let's just try that basic pattern just for a minute. Good, so I think you understand how that works. Now, that basic pattern can be used in very, very different and expressive ways. If I want to conduct something very soft, you keep the beat pattern very small. And if it's very legato, you can get, there's still an ictus there, by the way. You're always feeling that pulse. And then if something is very, like a march, very rhythmic, it's got a lot more bounce to the beat and a lot more bounce to the ictus. And obviously this is also showing tempo as well, but it shows articulation, it shows dynamics, so it's really big. Though I do want to explain one other thing. We generally, as conductors, try to keep our beat in what we call this conducting plane. It's a box about that size, sort of from your forehead to just below or just around, the midsection of your body. And the reason for that is that when you're in an ensemble, often you are reading music. And so you can't always be looking up because sometimes you have to use your peripheral vision to catch a conductor. And many beginning conductor will make the mistake of having their beat be all over the place, and the orchestra, who fundamentally just needs to see the rhythm and the tempo, will say, "Maestro, we can't see what's going on there because you go too low or you go too high or something like that." So try to envision this box that's, again, sort of from your forehead down to about midsection of your body, and that's our conducting plane in which the beat is contained, more or less. So again, all of those beat patterns, 2, 3, 4. For this hand, again, you want to keep this, you want to develop a sense of freedom. It's actually a very good exercise because it allows you to be very aware of your physicality. And that's an important thing when you're leading an ensemble. Now, I skipped over a very important part, but I wanted you to have the fundamentals of the beat patterns first before I introduce this concept, which is, how do we start? Well, there's a very important additional beat that we all need to learn. It's called the prep beat. The prep beat is going to give you the start of the music. And almost always, if a piece starts on the first beat, I'm not going to get into starting on other beats because that gets more complicated, but if it starts on the first beat, which a lot of music does, your hand is going to be in that upbeat position. So no matter what pattern you're about to go into, it always looks like and 1. And downbeat. Upbeat, downbeat. So if I'm conducting a piece in 3, it'll look like this. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? Or if it's in 4, same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The upbeat is crucial because it gives the musicians a lot of information. There's really 4 points that it establishes. First, it establishes tempo. So if I'm going fast, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you notice, the upbeat is in the same tempo, and it's essential that it be in that tempo. Second thing that it indicates is dynamics. So if it's a loud passage, 1, 2, 3, 4, or if it's something very soft. You want to have the prep beat relate to the dynamics as well. The third thing that it discusses is articulation. So if you have something that is very languid and legato, your upbeat should also reflect that. So it has sort of an ease to it. But again, if the music is quite staccato and angular, you want a nice sharp upbeat. Right? Then lastly, your upbeat also indicates mood and or expressivity. That ties into the other three things that we already discussed, but that last thing is sort of a less definable element, but one that is equally important. In fact, so much information and energy is communicated in that upbeat that it will really very much determine how an ensemble sounds on the downbeat. So you need to have in your head a very clear picture of what the sound you want to be is. And certainly, when you're actually conducting an ensemble, you start to understand how they respond to you. I've been working with the Eugene Opera Orchestra for well over a decade now, and we have sort of a shorthand of how we communicate with each other, and they understand what I bring as a conductor and how I express myself in a way now that we didn't have the first few times I conducted here. And so that's really nice because it makes things go a lot more efficiently in rehearsal. But this prep beat is really something that is so essential. It's a small thing, and you would think it's inconsequential, but it really, really isn't, because again, it gives those four fundamental things, that information, to the ensemble. The other thing that you're doing, if you're engaged with yourself physically when you give that upbeat, is you're taking a breath. And I think that breath is also very important because the majority of the instrumentalists in front of you, sorry strings, but you should be breathing, all wind and brass players, and of course a chorus or a solo singer in an aria is also breathing, and you want to breathe with them because that helps you align the music in a very, very both ensemble connected way, but also in an emotionally connected way. And if we're not experiencing some emotion or trying to help foster emotion when we're conducting, then it's kind of pointless. Then you're just being a traffic cop, as they sometimes say. So in this video, we've actually covered a lot, and I want you to take some time to practice these various elements. Now that you know what the prep beat is, you're always going to give it before you start a beat pattern, but I want you to practice with 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And again, understanding what the four elements of the prep beat show and how that helps influence the music. I would advise you to take some time on YouTube. There's tons of clips of conductors of every stripe, leading ensembles of every size. Take some time to watch various conductors and see what you notice about their conducting technique. One very quick story is when I was young, I went to see a concert with the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, and the great Lukas Foss was on the podium. Lukas Foss was a terrific composer and just genius of a musician. Had kind of an unclear conducting technique. And I didn't really understand conducting at that point and how it worked. But I was quite dismayed to see that I couldn't understand how what he was showing related to the rhythm of the orchestra. And ultimately you question, well, was it good conducting or not? Well, good conducting isn't necessarily clear conducting. It's clearly expressing the music. So all of those tools that we've discussed in this video are all tools to help you express the music. Lastly, I will just say that, again, I think not only is it fun to work on conducting, but I think it helps you contextualize music, particularly rhythmically, in a way that is very beneficial to your musical development. So take some time, review these beat patterns and fundamentals of conducting technique. Take some time to watch various conductors on YouTube and in concert video, wherever you can find it, and then think about that and how it applies to even music that you're learning as a soloist. In our next video, we're actually going to talk about the process of learning music, how I break down a score, and how you can use some organizational techniques to help you learn music efficiently and thoroughly. I look forward to seeing you then.